This is Rabbi Sachs. Welcome to the Chai Academy. Welcome to the Chai Center. We we had a little bit of a computer glitch, and now we're up again. So we will have our half-hour class, albeit 10 minutes late or 13 minutes late or whatever. So apologize for that, but it takes to err is human. To completely screw up takes a computer, as they say. So we have been discussing Genesis. We have been discussing Genesis and deep insights into the stories of Adam and Eve, Adam and Chava, and we have learned that they're not just simply stories. We're going to be taking hiatus for the next few days, and we're going to be discussing Chanukah. Chanukah begins this Thursday night, and Thursday night is the first night of Chanukah. We light the candles Thursday night. Of course, there's pre-Chanukah planning going on, but the bottom line is the mitzvah to light those candles and the mitzvah to have a menorah only begins Thursday night. So any of the pre-planning and the menorahs out that you see is similar to hearing the shofar 3 days before Rosh Hashanah. There's no mitzvah to it. So on Thursday night, we light the menorah. The menorah can be lit with candles, can be lit with candles of any color. It doesn't matter. You don't have to get those typical Hanukkah candles. The menorah can be lit with oil. It could be lit with olive oil, vegetable oil, any type of oil, and really any type of wick. Can't be lit with non-kosher oil. So if you have whale oil, as an example, which is gross, you cannot use that. Now, many people strive to light with olive oil because the miracle of the story of Hanukkah, one of the miracles, I should say, took place with olive oil. Now, we're going to be discussing these stories, and we're going to be trying to delve into the deeper meanings. Hello, Eileen, of Hanukkah, and even the stories, I think, will shed a little bit of light on why it's so important, why Hanukkah is such an important holiday. It wasn't just like that there was a war and there's a civil war, and then every so often we go to Gettysburg. That is important, but in addition, there's life lessons for us as Jews, or even non-Jews for that matter, in terms of Hanukkah. So I personally like with olive oil. You don't have to work hard to find olive oil. You can go to the local supermarket and they have olive oil. You can use the light one, you can use the virgin one, I don't care what the olives do at night. Any olive oil is fine. Any olive oil is totally fine to use, and I use little cotton wicks or pre-made wicks. You can get really fancy and buy filled olive oil cups. I do use that. Less mess, easy, throw it out. Now, it has to have enough oil, or the candles have to be thick enough or long enough, either or, to last 30 minutes. If they do not last 30 minutes, it's you haven't fulfilled your mitzvah. If you light them and they have enough oil to last 30 minutes and they don't, you still have the mitzvah. So let's say you light the menorah and you have to leave on an emergency and they only last 20 minutes. As you're leaving, you see one go out, but you don't have time. As long as it had enough for 30 minutes, it was fine. Olive oil in general lasts a long time. Oil lasts a long time than candles. The Hanukkah candles that come with menorahs, you see them in all the stores and supermarkets and Bed Bath and Beyond, and the Chai Center has. They do last 30 minutes. However, to assure they last 30 minutes, put them in the freezer or the refrigerator. The colder they are, the slower they'll burn. And so therefore, sometimes you find that they bend and they don't last 30 minutes. If you want to make sure they last 30 minutes, put these colored candles in the freezer, and they will last. But you can use tea lights. You can. It doesn't matter. You can carve out a potato and put a little bit of oil in there, and light it. So as long as they are in a straight line, and they are also equal. You may have seen menorahs in Judaica stores where it's fancy. One's here, then it goes, up and down, up and down. It's not kosher. They have to be in a straight line. You have to tell that's a menorah. The definition of a menorah is that it's in a straight line, and no one is higher, no one is lower, no one is out, no one is in. The only one that's different is the server, and that's not part of the count. The server candle. So on the first night, practically, you'll have one light plus a server. Second night, you'll have two lights plus a server. The menorah, the placing of the candles is placed on the extreme right of the menorah. That's where you place it. So the first night will be the extreme right. The second night will be, you place it extreme right and next to it. The third night, extreme right, next to extreme right, and next to that. Hi Susan. Yeah, I had a family emergency yesterday, and I was planning on giving the class, but it lasted and lasted and lasted. So sorry about that. So that's the placing of the menorah. But the actual lighting of the menorah is you light the newcomer first. So the first night you only have one to light. Once again, the server candle is not part of it. You light the server candle, then you light just the one. The second night you light the newcomer, and then yesterday's candle. And the third one, so eventually you place from right to left, but you light from left to right. So that is in terms of lighting. The menorah should either be placed in the window or be placed opposite the mezuzah. Chazarai. So you place it opposite the mezuzah. So two choices, one in the window and one opposite the mezuzah on the left side. Now, there's two mitzvahs of Chanukah. One is the lighting of the menorah. The lighting. The actual lighting. And as long as there's enough to last 30 minutes, the lighting is the mitzvah. If there's not enough to last 30 minutes, then the lighting is it won't count because it wasn't enough. So the lighting is the mitzvah. On the first night, you make 3 blessings. Right? On the second night, you do not make the 3 blessings. You just make 2. The blessing of Shechayanu, and I could email this to you upon request, Rabbi at the Chai Center. I will email it to you. You can also Google it yourself. So that is, and so there's 2 places, one in the window and one opposite the mezuzah. Now, there's a second mitzvah. The second mitzvah is called the spreading of the miracle. Right? The Prasume Nisa, to make the miracle known to the world that there was something called Chanukah, and there was a miracle. And just like our Genesis class and all our other classes, there's deep lessons, practical lessons. There is also in the Chanukah classes lessons. So when people see the menorah in the window, they say, what is it? What happened? And then you could explain to them the story of Chanukah and, if you so desire, the deep lessons. So throughout the next couple of days, we will be talking about the pragmatics and also the story, and also the lessons of Chanukah. So this is not your typical, it will not be your typical Hebrew school Chanukah class. Maybe that's what we should call it. Not your typical Chanukah class. Not your typical Hebrew school Chanukah class anyway. So now placing it in the window makes sense, because that way people can see. How you place it, by the way, I get that question a lot. Does it matter? Doesn't really matter. Right? Should they see from right to left, or that means you're seeing it wrong, or if they see it wrong, you're seeing it right? Doesn't matter, because that's not the one you're lighting. you're lighting one in your house, and if it is the one you're lighting, then it's got to be right for you. So if you light the menorah in the window, then light it right for you. Placing each new light is from left to right, but placing is right to left. If you're lighting it in your house, you light it the right way, and then in the window, it doesn't make a difference. So placing in the window makes sense because you're spreading the miracle, but it does say you can light it opposite your mezuzah, and the idea there is the mezuzah's on the right, the menorah's on the left, and when you walk through, you get powerful, positive mitzvah energy from both sides. It's almost like a car going into the car wash, gets water from all sides and keeps it clean. Can you imagine you just getting water from one side? So here, you're going through and you're surrounded by mitzvahs. There's another reason for placing it on the left side, because the left side symbolizes the dark side. Right is right. It's called right because it's right. Left is called left because it's not right. So you place the menorah on the left side. So essentially what you're doing is you're lighting up the left side. You're lighting up the dark side. You're lighting up the side that is antithetical to godliness, antithetical to holiness. That's the idea. This is not a political thing, left, right. This is just a holy versus non-holy. Think of the Star Wars movie, right? The dark side of the Force. So you're lighting up the dark side. So you place it there, and you open the eyes of the dark side, of something that's in the dark, that's not right, and you try and spiritually light them up. In Hasidic, there's a Hasidic saying. It's brought down in Tanya and other holy books that a little light dispels much darkness. So you're in a dark room and you light one single solitary match. That match chases away the darkness. Now you can see where you're going. It's a little match. Can you imagine it was 2 matches, 3 matches? Can you imagine it was a flashlight? Can you imagine it was a candle? Right? So the idea of lighting the menorah in general is to dispel the darkness. And that's why, if you think about Chanukah, is always around the shortest time of the year, the shortest day of the year, the time where darkness prevails much more than light. So the day is long in the summer. There's a lot of light in the summer. But in the winter, the day is short. And the night, the darkness is long. So we light up the darkness literally. We also light up the darkness figuratively. That the idea of Chanukah is to really spread the light. So and it's no coincidence. It's no coincidence that Chanukah always falls around the non-Jewish holiday where they say you spread cheer. So we're not here to spread cheer, but we're here to spread light. Cheer could be a beer. Light could be many things. Light could be light when someone's in a dark mood. We give them light, take them out of their depression, their melancholy. Somebody is suffering, right? We try and end their suffering. We try and help them get out of the suffering. So it's light. You give them light. And that's one of the things that the Chanukah miracles symbolize. As we'll talk, it will all come in like a jigsaw puzzle. So the word Chanukah itself comes from 2 things. One, Chanukah is 2 separate Hebrew words. Chanukah. They rested on the 25th. I will call you back after class. That was an emergency. But Chanukah, they rested on the 25th of the Hebrew month of Kislev. On the 24th day of Kislev, of the Hebrew month of Kislev, they were still at war. On the 22nd they were still at war. Today's the 22nd day of Kislev. And back in the day, they were still warring. They had no time to rest. On the 25th day, the war was over. And they rested on the 25th. Chanu, they rested. Ka, on the 25th. That's one reason why it's called Chanukah. Chanukah also means dedication, or in this case, rededication. They didn't dedicate the temple, they rededicated the temple. The temple was a mess, a disaster. The temple was broken in shambles. The holy temple was they had blood, they had idols, they had pigs, they had death, and there was ransacked. Things were stolen, things were broken. And on the 25th, they began their rededication process. And whatever they could do to get it normalcy, because this was normal life. They had a temple. Every day, people made pilgrimage to the temple, and they couldn't when they were warring. But on the 25th, they made a rededication. Chanukah rededicated their lives to the temple. Chanukah has the same etymology, has the same root word as chinuch. Chinuch means to educate. Right? On Chanukah, they got back to solid education. Right? During Chanukah, during that period, they could not study. They were forbidden. They were forbidden by the Assyrian Greeks to have any yeshivas, to have any Torah study. They were forbidden to do many of the mitzvahs. Like you wanted to give a bris on the 8th day, you weren't allowed to. Interesting to note. You want to give a bris another time? Not on the 8th day? Sure. But they sought to sow seeds of doubt in the Jewish mind. What's so important about the 8th day? Oh, the Torah says, Torah Shemara, nonsense. It's arbitrary. Do it on the 4th day. Do it on the 5th day. Do it on the 9th day. Do it on the 10th day. And don't do it for holy reasons. Do it for hygiene reasons. And everything. Oh, you have a Shabbat. Okay. Shabbat's a day of rest. Do it on Tuesday. No, but it says in the Torah. It says in the Torah we got to do it on Shabbat. You know when Shabbat is? Choose. So they basically drove the Jews crazy. They allowed them to keep some of the mitzvahs, but as long as it wasn't because God said, as long as it made sense. A day of rest makes sense. But you say God says Saturday, I say Tuesday. Christians say Sunday, Muslims say Friday. Right? So no, don't you don't have to keep it on Saturday. Keep your Shabbat on Wednesday, middle of the week, makes sense. Middle of the week from what? Doesn't make sense really if you think about it. So chinuch, they began to educate because they had months and months and possibly years of warped lessons being drummed down their throats, and therefore began a day of understanding what it's all about. You know, it's not dissimilar to communism. You know, when communism came to an end, there was so many Jews who really knew they were Jewish because they were targeted, but they did not know, and it's really sad, they didn't know what Jewish meant. They knew they were Jews. They knew that they could not get anywhere in the communist government. They knew they couldn't get any position. They had to work as a cleaning toilets or stocking shelves. They couldn't get anywhere in the Politburo, in the politics. They could never become a member of Congress because they're Jewish. But they knew less than a communist person who was trying to, snuff out, extinguish Judaism. They knew less, but they were Jews. And so when communism ended, and they were told, wow, let's go see a Torah, They said, Shtotikoya Sefer Torah. What is a Torah? We don't know. So likewise, very much the same. When they, when this decree ended, when the Assyrian Greeks were beaten back and beaten away, and a lot of Jews came and they were confused. They just didn't know. And yeah, and they may have done circumcisions on the 40th day because that was arbitrary. So chinuch, they had to rededicate, rededicate the temple, re-educate the masses. And thankfully there were a few strong people who wouldn't let Judaism dissipate, right? Because once again there was most of the people, they were distant. So you had the Hasmonean brothers. You had the Maccabee brothers. There were 5 brothers, and a gang of Hasmoneans, Hashmonaim, right? Who decided, we will not let Judaism fade away. It was a very bad test. It was less of a physical test. There was nobody saying to the gas chambers, to labor camp, to death marches. It wasn't like that. It wasn't like that. They let them live, unless you rebelled, of course, Unless you killed an officer, then you would be killed. But for the most part, they let them live. Right? They didn't send them to gulags, or they didn't send them to Siberia. So in a way, physically, it was better than Germany. It was better than communist Russia, the former Soviet Union. But in a way, it was worse, because they would not let them be Jews. It was an attack on the soul. And that's why Hanukkah is so important, because it was a complete attack on the soul. In Soviet Union, you could go to the shul. You could go, right? Rabbi Levin was the chief rabbi of Moscow, and there was a shul you could go to. It wasn't wise to go to the shul, because then your child could never get a job, and you probably would be fired from your engineering job. So it wasn't wise to go to the shul, but you could go, right? In the times of the Assyrian Greeks, you're praying to who? God? No, you can't do that. You're studying why? You're studying Torah to God? Because you want to understand godliness? No. You do me a favor. Study calculus. There's algebra. There's learn how to read the Greek letters, and learn how to read the count Roman numerals, etc. So it was a real attack, and it was very different. It was very different than Purim. Purim, they were going to be wiped out, right? Physically. Hanukkah, there was no threat of that whatsoever. No threat. It was strictly attack on the soul of the Jew. That's what they wanted. They wanted to attack the soul of the Jew. And which one is worse? Which one is worse? So if you ask the Kabbalistic masters, they say that a soul is worse, because a body is it's temporary anyway. When a person passes, their soul goes to heaven. And the soul said, well, you did, sorry you were killed by a Nazi, but come, you're holy, you're pure. But when you start attacking the soul, and that could be an eternal problem, because your soul has been attacked. Your body's attacked, but your body's mortal anyway. Terrible, but it's mortal anyway. Soul's eternal. And they just attacked the soul. The soul is bereft of life, because they've sucked it out of you. So Hanukkah was really problematic. It was really a disturbing scene. But thankfully we had the Hasmoneans, we had the Maccabees, who stood up and said, "No way, Jose, no way. This is not going to happen. And it was literally a small band of brothers. I believe there's a movie called that, Small Band of Brothers. But that's what it was. It was a small band of brothers. They were Kohanim. And they said that we're not going to tolerate this. So they did a number of things. One is they did clandestinely made sure that the Jews kept mitzvahs. So they had, instead of having yeshivas where they usually had yeshivas, they had yeshivas in the fields, right, far away from civilization. They got a memo, it was probably passed, secret from person to person, that fifth grade, due to the Assyrian Greek COVID, will not meet in the regular place because it can't, but it will meet, in so and so's farm. And they did do circumcisions clandestinely. There was no minyan. You called them oil. By the way, they did this in Soviet Union as well. They did keep Passover, but clandestinely. Everything was quiet. It was very similar. Spanish Inquisition, perhaps. We've had a rough ride. So, and that's what the dreidel is. If you ever wondered, we play with this dreidel, is that if ever somebody came, either a Syrian Greek soldier or a Jew, a Hellenized Jew, who was already like too far gone for the moment, or was a snitch, perhaps a rat. What they did was, when they came, so the teacher stopped talking about Torah in the yeshiva, and instead they played a spinning top. So all the person saw when he got closer, he didn't hear them say, this is what the Torah says, this is what the commentaries say. My Maimonides wasn't around. This is what the commentaries say, this is what this is what we have, the Talmud, or our, etc., etc. All they heard was, okay, kids, here are the rules. If you get a gimel, you get it all. And so they played spinning top if a soldier passed by, or if a rat passed by. And that way they assured that they weren't caught or ratted on. And that's why we play a dreidel today. Okay? That's why, that was one of the reasons why we have stuffing in our donut, because it was hidden. Right? The Maccabees, it was all done hush hush. So a donut is, you can't see the jelly, it's inside. Right? It's all inside. So everything was done. It was done clandestinely. It was done secretively. And we'll talk about why fried donut, obviously, it's connected with the oil. But no suspense there. But but that's one of the reasons why we eat a donut with the stuff inside. My days, it was only strawberry jelly. Nowadays, you can get, my goodness, you can get, you can even get, tofu if you so desired, or, throw in a little bit of cottage cheese, and then you throw in the cottage cheese, and then you throw out the donut. That's the way it goes in my house. So, these Maccabees were led by their father. Yochanan ben Matisyahu, right? He was the Maccabee, and he said, sons, if we don't do something, all Jews are going to be Hellenized. They're going to be Hellenized. They're going to be completely, they'll be more interested in Greek culture. They'll be more interested in the Greek gods than they will be in Hashem, in God. If we don't do something, instead of going to Shul Friday night, they're going to be going to the Colosseums and watching the plays. If we don't do something, the Hebrew language and the Hebrew alphabet is going to be forgotten. And instead, they're going to be reading in Greek letters, alpha, beta, delta, right, etc. When I was the Chabad rabbi on campus many, many years ago, so my group was called Chi Beta Delta, which is basically Chabad. But these it was a real risk. It was a real threat that ignorance would spread far and wide to the point where it's too difficult. Now, there's a lot of ignorance outside now. In 2020, there's a lot of ignorance about, forget about from non-Jews, but from Jews also. There's a lot of ignorance. And that's one of my hopes, is the Chai Academy will teach and teach. And even those who are not ignorant can gain from the Chai Academy. But there's a tremendous amount of ignorance. It's not dissimilar to what happened. And therefore, we have to be Maccabees. We have to be Hashmonaim. We have to be people that can step up and say, not on our watch. Right? So that's why I tell you, when I tell you share it, share the video if you enjoyed it, at least. Share it, because you got to teach somebody. The Lubavitcher Rebbe used to say, if you know an Aleph, you have to teach an Aleph. If you know an Aleph and a Bet, then you can't be satisfied just teaching the Aleph. You have to teach an Aleph and a Bet. You have to teach both. You have to. You have no choice. So when I say share it, it can be this or it could be anything. Share it. Share any Torah, as long as it's from a kosher source, because there's a basically a dearth of knowledge out there when it comes to Judaism, right? And I know. I mean, I speak to people and I say, would you like to put on tefillin? And they look at you and they say, what's tefillin? I don't judge them. Not judge them. Oh, that's terrible. You don't know what tefillin is. No, that doesn't enter my mind. It's like, OMG, how do we do this? How do we educate? So that's why it's so vastly important. It's just incredibly important that we study often, and to the people who watching this, teach that lesson to others. I know you do, but keep on doing it. So we're going to discuss the story tomorrow. Continue the story of the Maccabees and Yochanan and these 5 kids, and what they did essentially to change the status quo. And we could do that too. God bless.